The first phase, which is backfilling some 3 to 5 mile segment of the canal area known as Canal C, which tributaries, obviously, as we go into the future. We've got to acquire floodplain. Currently, about 30% of the floodplain is in public ownership. Secure navigation modifications and permitting, and develop restoration funding plan. This is not an easy task, but then again, this is a special place, and no one can expect it to be an easy task. We will work with the federal government, because we'll have to obviously deal with them and the Corps of Engineers. And we think that the $6.3 million, which the Corps has in Section 1135 of the Water Resources Development Act's funds, will go well towards getting it started. And in this year's budget, the state also has $8 million for that process. And I believe that working together that we can establish the relationship between the federal government, the state government, and the Water Management District to carry out this obvious multi-year project. For it will not be done in 1 year nor in 2 years. It'll be done over a period of time. So this $276 million, which we estimate would be the total cost, is not something that you put out in any given year. It's something that accrues over a period of time as the work is done, and therefore you take on the encumbrance of the activity. We will work as closely as we can to all authorities, Water Management District, our own state officials, and the federal government, to secure all the necessary permits and agreements to be sure that in fact this project can get carried out. Let me, in closing, then answering questions you might have, that this project obviously is an environmental project to restore wetlands, and we all know that President Bush has come out for no net loss, I believe, of wetlands, and I believe I was shown a publication today where he was quoted, or at least it was attributed to him, that he considers this, the Everglades, one of 2 major areas in the United States that need to be addressed. I'll certainly will point out that article to him tomorrow in terms of the Everglades. I think that the Corps of Engineers is a fine organization that we can work with, and I don't think its sole purpose, and I know some of their officials are here, was to dig. I think in some cases it's also to backfill. And I think in this case we may find that it was easier to dig than to backfill. Certainly in the event of, and doing so, you got to do it environmentally sound, and you just don't pick up the dirt and put it back in the ditch. So then we need to evaluate this first phase to see what it does do. Since we're talking about a lot of expenditure, we also want to make certain that we do it right. And I'm convinced that between the Water Management District, the Corps of Engineers, the state of Florida, that all the professionals and those that we will be retained, that we can assure that this will be a quality project. And again, as I pointed out in my statement, we know that there are navigational issues that will have to also be dealt with, which is outside the actual construction of the project. And I'm sure all of us working together that we can make our case in terms of why we need some deauthorization to get this project done. I'm also convinced that upland, the Orlando area, that all this can be handled without the flood concerns that some may raise, that we're now dechannelizing, thus water won't flow as rapidly, and thus it's going to back it up, and we're going to have some water in our front yard. And I think there's something, too, that we must continue to assure those who are used to seeing the water flow in a channel, that by going back to the way the river was, that it does not put in jeopardy what it is that their property stands for. So I'm here delighted to endorse the plan that we've worked on, to let you know that we'll move forward, that whatever will be needed in each cycle of funding and each action to be engaged in requiring law, that we will be in the forefront with you to make certain that it does occur. I think it's a massive project, and certainly one that everyone will be watching, since I'm sure there are other channelized areas, not only in the country, but possibly here in the state, that someone will surface as another likely candidate. And therefore, I think that not only are we doing the right thing, but we may well be setting a new course for others to follow. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Where are you going to get the money?
How long do you expect? You said you expected this to take a number of years. Do you have any guesstimate as to how long this will take?
Well, in discussion with staff, it appears that the first phase, by the time you get all the permitting, everybody agrees to do this, and then you actually engage in the backfilling and you evaluate, you're looking at, what, 3 to 5 years? Because you do need to evaluate what happens for a period of time. So again, we're using 3 to 5, which is a long margin of error there. It could be 3, it could be 5. But I think after that, the question will always be the construction schedule. How rapidly can you go? How good is the material to put back into the channelized area? How quickly can you move without turbidity that has an impact on the system? All that is to be determined by the engineers and those who do the technical work. But it's clear that if it took them 10 years to dig it, that in essence it's not going to be any less to fill it. And therefore it is clearly a multi-year project.
Where's the state going to get the funds to do this?
The state always has money. It's a question of priorities.
So you don't
And
need
therefore
the
I
federal...
have this as a, no, we're negotiating, we'll be negotiating with the federal government. This is a project which the federal government basically paid for. And therefore we will deal with the federal government in terms of developing the partnership as we have suggested this $6.3 million that currently the Corps has be used for this project. And you can rest assured that there'll be an awful lot of meetings over this subject to develop that relationship, that formula that can go forward for the entire project.
Suppose the Fed says, you know, we've got other things to do with our money, we're not giving you any.
I guess if they do that, we'll hold another news conference and then we'll answer that question. Right now, I'm always very optimistic when I deal with the other governments and don't expect difficulties when I enter discussions. And therefore, I prefer not to look at the negative side, what happens if. I think that there's an excellent chance that we can get this done, and therefore we're going in with a positive position that all agencies involved can come to agreement to get this work done.
It's a go for you.
It's a go.
Governor, I wrote the Conservation Recreation Lands